Paper was like gold in medieval times.
I want tobacco, sugar.
That everything we thought we knew about the world might turn out to be completely wrong.
October 20th, 1973, El Yunque National Forest, Puerto Rico. Friends on a camping trip have the uneasy feeling they're being watched.
We saw sort of like a shadow figure in there, not too high, and we couldn't distinguish what it was. It was nothing that I had ever seen. This was in between a human and an animal. It was so fast that I can't even describe how quick that thing moved.
This is National Park, Secrets and Legends. El Yunque National Forest on the eastern tip of Puerto Rico is 28,000 acres of untamed mountainous jungle. Its dense canopy hides a lush rainforest teeming with life. But some believe it conceals more than just exotic plants and animals. October 1973, a 16-year-old Hector Jacino is camping in El Yunque's dense forest with friends.
I was, looking for charcoal, opening the charcoal bag and everything, and one of my friends says, "What is that over there?" Then when we looked, we saw sort of like a shadow figure in there, not too high, and we couldn't distinguish what it was.
The strange creature then moves into a clearing.
He was like very fit. You could see the muscles, very skinny, very muscular. This was in between a human and an animal. The arms were very long. They were longer than your knee. And the feet, they were like in the form of a hoof. And then they had a tail.
Suddenly, the beast rushes toward the boys. Hector's friend is flattened.
It was so fast that I can't even describe how quick that thing moved. And it disappeared.
The island of Puerto Rico has no large predators, making the campers' encounter even more disturbing.
If you see a creature that resembles a human, but it's not a human, and it resembles an animal, but it's not an animal, it really messes up your head.
Evidence of strange creatures in El Yunque may date back over 1,000 years. Ancient rock carvings by Puerto Rico's Taino Indians have been uncovered throughout the area.
El Yunque held, even at those times, an important role to the ancient native populations.
The Taino believed El Yunque to be the home of Yucahu, one of their supreme deities.
The Taino Indians spoke about all the mysteries that are connected with this venerable place and left petroglyphs on granite that describe things that seemed unusual and strange.
The petroglyphs represented something beyond normal life. The signs suggest a combination of human and animal elements.
Over the last few decades, many ordinary Puerto Ricans have reported seeing a similar-looking creature in El Yunque. The beast, which is feared across the entire island, is known as the Chupacabra. Paranormal investigator Nick Redfern has been tracking the elusive creature for over a decade.
I've interviewed a wide variety of people, from veterinarians, police officers, civil defense people, members of public, ranchers, and they've all got their own stories and tales to tell of the Chupacabra. Some of the people have seen it, others have had farm animals attacked by it. And for me, when I put all this data together, the sightings, the encounters, the witnesses, the investigators, it's clear in my mind that there's a genuine phenomenon.
For Hector Jacino, he doesn't know what phenomenon he saw in El Yunque, but it appeared more than once. Driving away from his campsite after the first attack, Hector and his friends are taken by surprise again.
As we were driving down, and we saw three creatures. I remember they had fur like a dog has. They had like a triangular head, and their eyes were shining orange without us throwing any light at them. They had the hand like crab claw, like claws. And I remember all of us saying like, what the heck is that? And from that moment down, I don't remember anything.
What Hector does recall is inexplicably waking up hours later at a baseball field, over 12 miles from where he blacked out.
Honestly, I couldn't remember coming down on the mountain, you know. I had an uneasy feeling because I couldn't recall. And to this day, I cannot recall that portion of the night. Then, next thing that I know, there's a police car. And I do recall me looking inside the vehicle and seeing everybody like in a daze. Nobody talking, nobody talking. And one of my friends got out of the vehicle and started talking to the cop. I got out, and the policeman told us that it was very dangerous to stay where we were staying and that we needed to go back to the mountain. Then I got back in the vehicle and we left.
Why did Hector black out after seeing the creatures again? And what can explain the mysterious loss of time that all three friends experience? A clue may be found in the events of one night in February 1999.
On that night, at around 3 o'clock in the morning, he heard some noises. He looked in the darkness and he saw this entity. He threw the machete at this entity, and he says that when the machete hit this entity, it bounced back and broke in half.
A group of teenage boys set up camp in Yunque National Forest, Puerto Rico, when they're suddenly attacked by a terrifying creature. They then mysteriously black out and wake up hours later, several miles away. Many also claim to have had experiences with other beasts that locals refer to as Chupacabras. One of the most shocking encounters occurred on a tiny farm in July 1999. Wilfredo Gonzalez was the private investigator assigned to the case.
I was talking to Juan, one of the owners of the farm, and he was telling me that on that night, at around 3 o'clock in the morning, he heard like some noises. He went outside and he heard a little pig squealing. He looked in the darkness and he saw like this silhouette that was carrying a little pig.
Juan is then confronted by a shocking sight. Dozens of his pigs mutilated, lifeless carcasses with their blood and organs removed.
40 pigs were killed. I took pictures of the pigs, and mostly all of the pigs had a round hole next to the right or left front leg. And you could see that there was no inside. But also there were no blood around the carcass.
Then suddenly, Juan comes face to face with the Chupacabra.
From the waist down, it looked like a kangaroo, you know, big, fatty legs. And from the waist up, it was like kind of skinny. But it had like two little arms with claws. And he says that it had like red eyes and that it smelled horrible.
Juan attacks the Chupacabra with a machete. Then something shocking occurs.
He threw the machete, and when the machete hit this entity, it bounced back and broke in half. It sounded like when you hit something made out of metal.
The day after the alarming intrusion, Juan receives another kind of unexpected visit to his farm.
A guy and a woman dressed in black in a black car came around. Usually in Puerto Rico, you don't dress with suits in this kind of hot weather here. They asked him for the machete, and they said that they were going to take the machete with them because they needed to perform some tests on the machete. He didn't want to give them the machete. but somehow they managed to press him to give them the machete.
There are other reports of similar visits in connection with Chupacabra sightings. The anonymous agents are known by locals as Men in Black.
The Men in Black are very good at intimidating people, very adept at using fear and psychological tactics. Very often it guarantees a person will not speak about the experience.
Who these agents are remains a mystery, but some believe they could be part of the U.S. government.
Could this be the Air Force? Could it be members of the Department of the Defense? Some unnamed, ununiformed agency working within the government, but part of a black project where everything is concealed? I think it's very likely that that is the case.
The prospect of a government cover-up gained traction in 2005 when researcher Nick Redfern met a U.S. civil defense agent with access to classified government records.
He actually pulled out these huge files. These files and dossiers contained countless reports, paintings, drawings of unusual creatures that eyewitnesses had reported to the civil defense people.
Redfern claims he was shown one government report after another detailing the sightings of Chupacabras and other inexplicable entities in Yunque National Forest.
This opened my eyes to something really, really intriguing. It's not just, the strange creature investigators that are getting these reports. The official world is getting them as well. The number of reports that we have on record is the tip of the iceberg. We are actually hot on the trail of something that's unknown, but is very, very real.
Why have all these alleged reports made by the public been ignored?
Many people who've seen the Chupacabra have seen UFOs in the same places, and this has given rise to the theory, well, could the Chupacabra be some sort of alien life form itself?
El Yunque National Forest, Puerto Rico, is a vast jungle shrouded in cloud and mist, and also cloaked in secrecy. Some believe the U.S. government is covering up the presence of the legendary Chupacabra, accused of slaying livestock and terrorizing visitors to the rainforest. In 1973, campers have an encounter that suggests the Chupacabra may be part of a much larger government conspiracy.
A group of school children decided to go to El Yunque. They set up their camp and found themselves gripped with terror as they suddenly saw Chupacabras. There were around 6 or 7 of them, and they were dashing at superhuman speed back and forth among them. The speeds at which they would move were just absolutely extraordinary.
The children fear the monsters might attack at any moment.
One of the children is so terrified that he actually attempts to knock himself unconscious.
They all desperately want to escape, but there seems to be no exit.
They attempted all to run away, but the only path that was available was blocked by these creatures.
Suddenly, there is another presence, not around them, but directly overhead.
And one of them says, what is that over there? And when they looked, they saw a flying saucer landing.
Already terrorized by Chupacabras, the UFO now has the children in a state of shock. 15 minutes later, 2 kids that have taken cover in the jungle make a strange discovery.
They suddenly see what they describe as a glimmering polychromatic egg that is on the ground in front of them. Now, they were too frightened to go over and touch it, so they simply stared at it.
Could the mysterious egg somehow be connected to the UFO? And is there also a link between the UFO and the Chupacabras that terrorize the children?
Many people who've seen UFOs and strange lights in the sky around El Yunque, the encounters have occurred in the same places and locations where the Chupacabra has been seen or where the attacks have occurred. So this has given rise to the theory, could the Chupacabra be some sort of alien life form itself?
Researchers trying to dig deeper say they have been stonewalled by Puerto Rico's largest tenant, the United States military.
Nearly 13% of all of Puerto Rico is occupied by the military, which has had a long-standing interest in UFOs, in spite of their claims to the contrary. They have tracked this ferociously for decades.
Several years ago, the U.S. government closed El Yunque National Forest, claiming the jungle's main road was destroyed by a hurricane. But some allege a rash of UFO activity is the real reason for the closure.
Muchos vecinos de las áreas cercanas al lugar están viendo en las noches objetos no identificados tipo platillos voladores de gran tamaño entrar y salir de este lugar.
Many of these witnesses are extraordinarily good witnesses, not people that are prone to hallucinations or delusion. So their testimony, to me, is extremely important.
Un compañero de trabajo mío hace unos meses atrás en la autopista vio unas luces en el cielo iluminándose. Entonces, sé qué es lo que está pasando. El gobierno está ocultando algo aquí que no deja que uno pase para allá adentro.
Although many believe the government is covering up evidence of extraterrestrial activity, there are those who think otherwise, claiming that there is something much more sinister at play.
There have been things witnessed here that we know are our own military's equipment and technology that does look very much like an alien technology.
El Yunque National Forest in Puerto Rico is the alleged domain of mysterious and dangerous creatures called Chupacabras. Some researchers believe these terrifying beasts are linked to UFO sightings and may be extraterrestrial in origin. But there is another, even more explosive theory about the strange encounters in the rainforest.
Many of these UFO sightings and so forth that people claim to have seen may be attributable, in large part, to the military's own involvement in the development and possibly the deployment of experimental craft. The military has been hard at work trying to develop alternate sources of propulsion and new sources of energy to create spacecraft that can seemingly defy gravity, make 90-degree turns, look like they are blinking out of existence, coming back, performing all of these maneuvers that people claim that they see here in El Yunque.
If the mysterious craft come from U.S. military bases near El Yunque, what can explain the Chupacabra, which has been seen there for decades?
One of the stories I've heard time and time again is that genetic experimentation is occurring at some of these bases, and it's led to the creation of the Chupacabra that reportedly inhabit El Yunque. And, you know, the authorities don't want to admit to it, so they dismiss it as folklore.
Hundreds claim to have encountered strange creatures, and many describe an entity that seems to be genetically engineered.
It wasn't a human, it wasn't a monkey, it wasn't a kangaroo, it wasn't a dog. I cannot tell you what it was, but it did look like a hybrid in between a human and an animal. That's all that I can say.
Is it possible that these hybrid creatures are some kind of super soldier experiment?
You know, the idea that the military might have its hands on some sort of terrifying killing machine, they're not going to reveal that. So that's why I think the witness testimony from El Yunque is so important.
If the U.S. government is experimenting with radical new battlefield technologies, why has it chosen El Yunque National Forest as the venue?
The United States government owns Puerto Rico. They have carte blanche to do pretty much whatever they want to do in El Yunque. So that makes this a particularly strong magnet. El Yunque is a perfect playground for the military, a virtual laboratory.
There may be other isolated areas in the United States, but Peter Jordan believes El Yunque's distant offshore location makes it unique.
They have purposely pre-selected areas where they know that their activities can be hidden. There are many of these places, but none of them have the acreage and the remoteness of a jungle, of a rainforest.
It's also alleged that El Yunque is a strategic location for U.S. military experiments because of certain beliefs held by the local population.
Some claim that people in Puerto Rico lurch toward some sort of supernatural or paranormal explanation because of their own particular religious backgrounds, because of perhaps some of the superstitions that you find on the island.
By feeding into the extraterrestrial story, the U.S. government may be running a disinformation campaign to help maintain secrecy about their experimental activities.
It's easier to use people's belief. It's a perfect way to explain something away when you don't want somebody to know too much.
The beliefs of Puerto Ricans may play a part in transforming El Yunque into the U.S. military's most important experimental laboratory. Its dense rainforest canopy could cover the deception and secrecy lurking in the shadows below.
El Yunque has to be sort of treated with respect. When I walk into El Yunque, I just get that feeling where, you know, the hairs on your arm start to rise up.
Most probably people don't know the dark side of El Yunque. I remember El Yunque every day of my life. I don't like to be here. I feel uneasy to be here. I don't know why.
El Yunque is mysterious just by appearance alone. But then when you start taking into account all of the interesting things that people claim to have experienced, it becomes truly one of the most mysterious places in the world.